Since moving out of the city, I have found a lot of peace and comfort choosing the slow life. And one of the things that I love to do is read history. Right now I'm reading this book called Frontier Grit, The Unlikely True Stories of Daring Pioneer Women, and it's awesome. The very first chapter is about a woman named Nellie Cashman, the Gold Rush boomer. She had so much tenacity. There's something about reading the stories of the lives of all the people who walked the earth before us that make me reach deep down inside and find that grit within myself. Page 4. To understand how Nellie Cashman developed the characteristics manifest in the American West, we return to Ireland in the 1840s, where absentee British landlords owned 80% of the land. Ruling from afar, this gentry class forced the Irish working poor to raise crops on behalf of a corrupt overseers. While Ireland produced a wide variety of foods, the poor existed on one crop as the basis of their diet, the potato. When the potato crop failed multiple years in a row to blight, starvation set in. In an appalling irony, Ireland continued to export grains and other foods throughout the famine. For this reason, many historians today consider the period known in Ireland as the Great Hunger to be genocide rather than famine. It is estimated that more than 1 million people died and another 1 million immigrated, a loss that amounted to more than 25% of the country within a few short years. Nellie later referred to the famine as Ireland's unequal conquest between want and oppression. Though it is unclear precisely when in 1845 Nellie was born and at what age she left Ireland behind, it is undeniable that her native land left a deep and lasting impression. From her early years, she emerged with a deep devotion to her Catholic religion, an immense appreciation for the freedom of the United States, a healthy disregard for the wealthy classes, and an awareness of what it means to suffer. She also established a pattern of leaving one place behind in search of a new beginning. From limited records, it appears that Nellie's father may have been one of the million Irish who died in the famine. Others say he lived to take his family to Boston. With or without her husband, Nellie's mother and her daughters sailed for America in a coffin ship, whose notoriously tight quarters and inadequate food ran rampant with disease. The women landed in Boston, where the working class resented the arrival of the desperate Irishmen willing to work for pittance. "No Irish need apply," signs hung in many shop windows, and the people of Boston, by and large, considered the Irish to be a servant race. Despite this, the women managed to find work and stayed in Boston for roughly 15 years. Nellie found employment as a bellhop in a hotel for part-time, where she once attended to General Ulysses S. Grant. The story goes that when she told the general that she wanted to do things with her life, he replied, "Why don't you go west, young woman? The West needs people like you." Shortly after the women arrived, Nellie's sister Fanny became engaged to another Irish immigrant. In the prospering town of San Francisco, Nellie surely had plenty of marriage opportunities, but she stayed single, saying she preferred to be pals with men than to be a cook for one man. While Fanny settled into married life, Nellie decided to explore, yearning for gold, opportunity, and adventure. Though details from these years are scarce and accounts contradictory, it appears tales of rich paying silver mines in Nevada drew Nellie and her mother first to Virginia City, then onto rough and tumble Peokie, Nevada, notorious for brawls and gunfights. A lack of law enforcement took its toll on the town. In fact, 72 graves dotted Boot Hill before a single soul in Peoki died of natural causes. The settlement contained gold rushers, Mexicans, and Indians, but precious few women. Peoki had already blown up and burned once before the women got there, and boasted no fewer than 72 saloons and 32 brothels. A location as remote and rough as this, one would hardly seem like a natural choice for two single women, but Nellie fell in love with both the miners and the mining way of life. One gold rusher said the biggest attractions of the lifestyle were independence and absolute equality in the world of chance, a description that couldn't stand in greater contrast to the injustice Nellie had witnessed in Ireland. In Peoki, fortunes arose one day and burned to the ground the next. Intense freedom existed alongside intense suffering. Deeply energized by the appeal of life at full tide, Nellie set two goals for herself. The first was to make a great deal of money, and the second was to help anyone in need along the way. Page 7. For 77 days, Nellie's group traveled by snowshoe, pulling sleds packed tight with hundreds of pounds of potatoes, lime juice, and other supplies. At times, the trail entirely disappeared in the snowy abyss. When dogs could no longer pull through the deep drifts, Nellie strapped a sled to her own back and hauled it across the wide expanse. Believing the party would never succeed, the commander at the nearest fort sent a rescue party to reclaim any survivors. When the troops showed up to rescue Nellie, they found her camped out on a frozen Stykine River, cooking supper over a campfire and whistling a merry tune. Is it over already? That was really fast. That's a shame because I could talk about pioneer women all day. Well, if you love world history and hearing the stories of people and you're a foodie, you should really subscribe to my channel because I'm going to upload every week. Bye.